Okay, so it's good to be back for another Tanya Tuesday. As we're getting over all the matzah as the bread of faith, hopefully changes our demeanor, and hopefully we have gone through Passover. We didn't pass over Passover, but we've taken all the energy from Passover and become better people throughout the year. Faith and healing, that will surely help us in the Tanya. Now today's Tanya is a special chapter, so special that actually in the original Tanya it wasn't included. Why is that? That's because it doesn't really fit. It's not really part of the flow of the Tanya. It doesn't fit with the flow of the chapters before it, which we're talking about what to do when meditation fails. We discussed crushing yourself and then how to get happy after you crush yourself. This is not really in any continuation to that. It's completely like stuck smack in the middle. And like I said, in the original Tanya, it wasn't even there. This chapter is all about what I said, the golden rule. It's all about Ahavat Yisrael, loving your fellow as yourself, and the Tanya's take on it. And it's interesting that it was put in chapter 32, because what is 32 in Hebrew? 32 in Hebrew is Lev. Lev means heart. So people say the heart of the Tanya is actually this chapter. So though it's not technically part of the official narrative, it's at the heart of everything that's discussed here. And though, of course, it doesn't really fit in the flow, it obviously has a lot of themes that carry over to other areas as well. So we're going to explore this chapter. Again, this very wondrous chapter. And not only is it a special chapter that the Alter Rebbe chose to include it, despite it not being connected to anything. So if anything, it tells you it's more special. The Rebbe would also push this chapter a lot. He, at one point, the Rebbe actually printed a book called Kuntras Avas Yisrael, the booklet of loving your fellow. And in it, he included many Hasidic discourses on loving your fellow as yourself. And the first part of it was this chapter, chapter 22. And of course, this follows the general Chabad viewpoint that if you want to change your viewpoint in anything, you got to learn about it, right? So just to say love someone is easy enough to say, but hard to do unless you actually meditate, contemplate, and think about it. And that's what this chapter does for us. This chapter will give us a great perspective on being able to love other people and understanding for once and for all the golden rule. So, what is the golden rule? Not like, as we said earlier, the rabbi joke, right? That gold rules, right? That's generally what people think of the golden rule. They actually tell the story of a wealthy man who used to go to synagogue, and because of his wealth, he used to be called up to the Torah a lot. And then he became poor, and they stopped calling him up. Then he became wealthy again, and they started calling him up again to the Torah. So one day he gets called up to the Torah when he was wealthy again, and he comes up to the Torah, and he leaves $500 at the top. So they ask him, and he walks away. So they ask him, "Why are you leaving $500 here?" He says, "Listen, I realized you're not calling me up; you're calling my money up. So I put my money up here. That's what you're calling." That's often how it goes. The gold rules, and that is really indicative. So why does gold rule? This will break down to really the core. This story that I just told you of, this wealthy man and the golden rule, meaning gold rules, really comes to the core of the difference between love that's not healthy and the golden rule, which is love that is healthy. Okay, so again, it gets to the core of, did people have trouble getting on before? It's like suddenly everybody piled in over here. Okay, not sure, but we went from three to nine very quickly, but okay. So again, the golden rule, the difference between love that is not godly and the love that is godly really differentiates between what is truly the golden rule and what is not. Just to tell you one more story. It's a famous story. Rabbi Tursky would quote a lot, but it's from a midrash somewhere. That they tell the story of a fisherman who's going fishing, and he manages to get this big piece of salmon. So the fisherman, as he gets the salmon, he says, "Ah, the king loves salmon." So the salmon hears the fisherman. He says, "Ah, I'm so lucky. I'm going to be brought to the palace. I'm going to have a good life." No. So the fisherman takes the salmon with him, and he gets to the the guard at the front. He says, "I'd like to bring the salmon in because the king loves salmon." And the guard looks at it, looks at the salmon, and says, "Wow, you're right. Wow, this is an amazing salmon. The king loves salmon." And then fisherman comes inside to the kitchen, and he tells the chef, "I brought you a salmon. The king loves salmon." The chef looks at it and says, "Wow, whew, beautiful salmon. The king loves it." Finally, the salmon is on the king's plate. The king is about to cut the salmon into multiple pieces. And the salmon finally screams out as he understands what's going on. He screams at the king and he says, "King, king, you don't love the salmon, you love yourself. You don't love me, you love yourself. You don't love salmon, you love myself." So what does that mean? It's a midrash, but it's very indicative. Love can be not real love. Love can be loving yourself. That is the difference between, quote unquote, the golden rule and love as we naturally experience it. We naturally love things that feed us, feed our ego, feed our selfish lives. That is generally what love is. That's the nature of love. Not deeper layers of love, which are more selfless, 100%. But basic love is actually really loving yourself. And that stems from where? From which soul? From the animal soul. Remember, the animal soul is a selfish soul, a soul that only cares about itself. The animal soul, when it loves, doesn't actually love anything else, doesn't truly love anything else. Your animal soul, when it loves something, it loves what it can get from it. So when your animal soul loves salmon, it doesn't actually love salmon. It loves itself. When your animal soul loves candy, it doesn't love the candy, it loves itself. When your animal soul loves a spouse, it also doesn't love your spouse, it loves itself. When your animal soul loves your children, your animal soul is not loving your children, it's loving your children, what your children can bring you value. That's why sometimes you find marriages which might be falling apart at the seams. It can be, not always, but it can be indicative of a love that was based on an animal soul. Similarly, parents that get overly frustrated with their children when they're not performing and they're not showing the kindness and compassion to their children, that maybe, again, they want to be able to show to the world, look at my kid, look at how successful they are. And when their children are not living up to what they were hoping they would show off to the world, they get very, very not nice to their children. These are all indicators of a love that is based on the animal soul. Let's give another couple examples. Love, I mentioned earlier, who you call up to the Torah. If you never call up poor people to the Torah, there's something wrong. Okay, maybe you call up rich people a little bit more. There's even precedence in the Talmud. It says that Rabbi would honor wealthy people. There's nothing wrong with that. But to the point where poor people will never get honored and things like that, that is definitely a problem. We have there's other types of love. Oh, there was another example that just came to mind, but it slipped my mind. But regardless, this is the unhealthy love that exists in the world is the love that is based on what you can benefit from it. So in this context, if you have a friend, a real friend is someone, as I say, who sticks by you through thick and thin, right? That's the idea. The idea is that whatever friend you have, they'll be there whether you're successful, whether you're not successful. But there are so many people that are only friends for whatever they can benefit from it. Now, there's an interesting fine line here. Because there's also a line of like where you don't want to be taken advantage of. There's a balance to be had here. But if you only love people when they're beneficial to you, then you are never truly experiencing true love, is really the point. The point is, if you only love fellow Jew or love other people or care about other people when they're beneficial to you, and the moment they're not beneficial to you, you have disgust, contempt, annoyance, no grace, no kindness, no compassion, then you are never truly experiencing love to other people. You are, in essence, only loving yourself. So if you come to synagogue and there's an annoying person there and you have no place in your heart to show them compassion and kindness, even if they are 100% annoying, I'm not going to debate that. Or let's say you're in the supermarket, or let's say you're driving your car and someone cuts you off. In all these different areas of life, if you never have kindness, compassion, care, understanding for other people, you don't really truly love anything. You love yourself. An inch of compassion goes a long way. I think that's what I'm reading there. You have, again, thinking about your children is a good example. If you can only love your children when they perform, then you're not truly loving your children. If you can only love your spouse when they are doing everything that you want them to do, then again, you're not truly loving them. And if we're called upon, as God does call upon us, to show kindness, care, and compassion to people around us, then as long as we are only loving people around us when they're making us happy, and the moment they get annoyed with them, we have zero patience and zero tolerance and zero ability to handle other people. That means that we are living and walking around in a paradigm of the animal soul. And so, though, again, as I said, chapter 32, this chapter is not really connected to the flow of the Tanya. It is very much and plays very much into what the Tanya here is talking about, because the Tanya is all talking about godly soul versus animal soul. And so in that context, it automatically plays into the golden rule, and which is, when are you, how can one truly come to a place where one loves someone else as yourself? It's only possible with the godly soul. The animal soul, you will never love someone as much as yourself, because for yourself, you love yourself unconditionally for yourself, and you only love other people in as much as they give you benefit. If you were to love other people as yourself, then you would have to give them kindness, care, and compassion, even when they are not giving you any benefit. That's not possible in the paradigm of the animal soul. The animal soul's paradigm is only to love when it's beneficial for me, only to care when it's useful for me. Okay? Let's take a sports analogy. This is because it's very simple. Okay? There's the fair weather fans, right? The fair weather fans. You don't truly love a team if only when they're winning, right? They can't only be your team when they're winning, right? They have to be your team through thick and thin, right? That is now you might say loving your sports team is from the godly soul. I'm not necessarily going there, but that's for another time. Many of the things we do are for a benefit, whether physical or spiritual. I don't necessarily see anything wrong with that. Many things we do are for a benefit. I'm not sure the question. What I'm trying to say, I'm not saying you should go in life walking around. And I'm not saying we need to walk around life looking to do things that are not beneficial to us. What I'm saying, like, you shouldn't go into business to lose money. What I am saying is that we cannot only love and care for people around us if they bring us benefit. We have to be able to love and care for people around us regardless of the benefit that they will bring us. That's what Ahavat Yisrael is about, as we're going to see. Just one more comment here. You can't love someone who only behaves the way you want them to. Yes, it's another way of saying it. You cannot love someone who only behaves the way you want them to. Okay. I want to read some text here. A relationship. So someone asked her, what about relationships that are mutually nurturing? I assure you, you're not going to get into marriage just because you have a mitzvah to love someone as your fellow, just because you have a mitzvah to love people. The point here is, though, once you love your spouse, you love them, though, yes, they should be mutually beneficial. That's why you get into a marriage, but you don't only love them in those moments, okay? When they're tired, when they're on an off day, when they're having a rough patch, you still love them, right? Okay, so let us take a look over here. Um, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the Tanya and make sure. So if you have chapter 32, it's page 361. And let's take a look over here. Share and share. Okay. Let me zoom in 1 second. Tanya says like this: the tools and meditations of chapter 29 to 31 will help you loosen the ties of your ego and find joy in the spiritual through adopting the outlook of your divine soul. In this chapter, we'll discuss the egoless attitude will affect the way you look at other people. Now, when you put into practice the above ideas so that your body becomes disgusting in your eyes and repulsive, and you find happiness in the joy of your divine soul alone, this frame of mind will be an easily accessible, straightforward path to come to fulfill the mitzvah, love your fellow as yourself. Extending love to every soul in Israel, from great to small, as Maimonides rules, every person is commanded to love each and every individual of Israel as much as he loves his own self, as the verse states, love your fellow as yourself. So I want to focus on those first words where he said that your body becomes disgusting, your eyes are repulsive. That was the beginning of last chapter. The beginning of last chapter is all about discussing how you could be happy despite your lowly animal soul and body, because your soul, your godly soul, is what's important to you. We discussed at the end of the chapter, there's a way to look at your body as also a godly thing, but that wasn't the main theme of the chapter. So he's starting off with this premise. If your soul is the most important part of you, then you should find it easy to love someone else as yourself, because you are living with your godly soul. And your godly soul is what's important to you. And once you're at the level of your soul, all you care is about is another soul. And so when you look at the other person, so let's look at it like this. Just as me, I can ignore my repulsive body by focusing on my soul, I can also look at the other person. Say that person has bad character traits. That person talks too much. That person always does something I don't like. That is their body. That is the nature of their body on this earth. But their soul is pure. Their soul is beautiful. Their soul is a diamond. So let's read like this. For when your body, which separates you from others, becomes repulsive and disgraceful to you, you will appreciate more the value of the divine soul, which unites us all. And as for the soul and spirit, who knows their greatness and their worth and the root and source in the living God? So he's saying, what separates us from other people is our bodies. Our bodies are what separates us from other people. Our souls, at the core level, are really all a piece of God. So how can I reject someone whose body is giving me good reason to hate them when their soul is as pure and godly and as wonderful as mine? I have no reason to hate them anymore because I don't look at bodies, I look at souls. That's what he continues. Even if you disregard the concerns of your body, there might be an obstacle in coming to love your fellows yourself from the soul's perspective. For example, if someone is inferior to you spirituality, you may find it difficult to love them as yourself. Therefore, the Tanya states here, even if someone appears to be lower than you spiritually speaking, as for the soul and the spirit who knows their greatness and worth, you ought to humble yourself before this person, for perhaps his or her soul is greater than yours. I think his point here is more to someone who views themselves as a more spiritual person. And so they may look down at the other person and say, yeah, true. their body may be getting in the way, but doesn't their body show that they have a very lowly soul? And the answer is no. Whatever the body presents doesn't mean anything about their soul. They could have a very high spiritual soul, and just the way it came down and the shackles of the body here, it looks very lowly spiritually. But then he continues, additional to that, in addition to the fact that you don't know how hard the soul is, and ultimately at the level of essence, all souls are equal, being that all of them are alike and they all have one Father. Ultimately, it doesn't matter who is the greatest soul. At the level of the soul essence, we are all one and the same. On that level, your love for your fellow will be unconditional. All right, so his point is that in addition to the fact that the other person's soul may be higher than yours, truthfully, if you go to the deepest layer of each soul, we're all the same. So what is he talking about? For this, you have to remember chapter 2. So I'll just remind you of chapter 2. In chapter 2, we described how every soul starts off as a piece of God. But then, just like a pregnancy, there's a gestation period. I'll get to Lyle's question soon. There's a gestation period. And within this gestation period, within this gestation period, the soul, the soul comes into different worlds and kind of gets added layers to its essence. And then the soul departs from the spiritual worlds and comes to this world. And when it departs from the spiritual worlds to this world, it can depart at different areas, along the pole, along the chain, along the path, Oh, so the longer the soul stays in the gestation period, the more formed it is, and so the less spiritual it will be. So we described as greater spiritual souls exit the spiritual worlds to us sooner, and that means that they're less formed, and automatically they're more spiritual. So his first point was looking at the soul as it is on this world. You may have someone in a very coarse body, but truthfully has a very deep spiritual soul. You haven't found it yet, but it's there. That's number one. He says, number one, you have no idea. Purely on the levels of souls after their gestation period, that person may have a more spiritual soul than yours. This may take more time to get to it, but it's there. That's number one. Number two is if we ignore the whole gestation period, we look at the essence of everybody's soul, the essence of all our souls are the same. That's his second argument. I'll get to Lyle's question in a moment, but it's a very important question. Let us continue. That is why... All right, so he continues. And that is why all Israel are called brothers, literally, due to their singular source of their souls in the one God. It is only their bodies that separate them. And therefore, those who make their bodies primary and their souls secondary, it is impossible for them to have genuine love and brotherhood among them, but only a conditional love. Conditional love means I love the person for whatever reason that I give. I love the person because of how they help me. I love the person because of what they're doing for me. But if I realize that that other person is actually me, because at the essence, our souls really come from the same place, then there's no reason to hate. As we explain in other places, it would be like slapping yourself. The other Jew literally shares the same soul as you. Okay, so someone asked, does this apply? Very important question. Does this apply? Is it being written specifically for Jewish souls or all beings? The answer is, this is being written only for Jewish souls. Not all of these concepts apply to all souls. So one of our beliefs, which came from chapter 2, is the uniqueness of the Jewish soul. There's a very unique soul. So the concept that the essence of our souls is all the same only applies to godly souls, okay? So truthfully, the concept of love your fellow as yourself actually only applies to a fellow Jew. The Ahavta l'reacha kamocha. The Torah says, love, literally says, love your friend or fellow. Love your friend as yourself. Is actually a mitzvah referring specifically to other Jewish people. So you may ask, what about Gentiles? The answer is, that goes back to the first point that he started with. This chapter still helps for our love of people who aren't Jewish, though it may not be in the same way. Once we make our bodies the most important part, and our souls, less sorry. Once we make our souls the most important part, and our bodies less important, then even though someone who is not Jewish does not have a godly soul, they still have a soul given to them by God. And so unless they are one of the wicked people of the world, which then you can hate them, unless they're one of the wicked people of the world, you love and appreciate the godly soul, not the same level as our godly soul, but you appreciate the godly soul that's given within them, whatever energy that God has given them, and appreciate that they have been created by God and that they have a mission here on this earth too. And therefore, again, we can give them grace, care, kindness, and compassion, understanding that they were placed here as well with a mission from God. So the first part applies to everybody, putting the souls in front of bodies, and that applies whether someone has a Jewish soul or doesn't. The second part, which was a second part, he put it in a second section. Not only do you have to put your soul before your body, but you should know at the soul level, at very, very essence, you're all the same. That does not apply with everything around you. Now, this idea that Judaism believes in caring and kindness and compassion for everybody is no more expressed than the famous story of Jonah and the whale and Nineveh, which is actually a story that we read on Yom Kippur, where the prophet Jonah did not want to go help the people of Nineveh, and God said, no, you got to go help them. And just because they're not Jewish, you got to go help them, see if they can repent, tell them what's going on, and indeed they ended up repenting. So just because someone does not have the godly soul, they nevertheless have a soul given to them by God, and they do have a godly mission, though it may not be the same as ours. And so though at the essence of their soul level is not the same as ours, 100% the Jewish teachings will tell us we do have to show care, kindness, and compassion, and love them as well. Though again, the actual commandment to love your fellow is a commandment to fulfilling the mitzvah is, I believe, the technical halachic mitzvah is to love fellow Jews. That is my recollection. Okay, I hope that answers that question. And again, just to put this in an even greater perspective, I don't know of any other religion that has the belief that people who are quote unquote non-believers, people who do not fully convert, have a place in heaven. Judaism has that unique belief that that people don't have to become Jewish, nor should we push them to become Jewish. Even Gentiles fulfilling the 7 Noahide laws can and should be able to connect to God and be able to be deserving of heaven. Okay. So that is part number 1. Now, I want to say one thing about this idea, because we can actually talk about the love for our fellow on many, many different levels. So, I'll present it with a story. The story is, there was one time a king who had a prince, and this prince was lame. He couldn't walk very well. He had a mangled leg, and it wasn't very good. So the king hired 3 painters and said, paint my son and paint him in a good light. So the first painter painted this prince with no physical ailments. He painted him with looking 100% healthy. The second painter decided to paint the prince from the side, so it's being more truthful. It's being more truthful. And you also don't see you don't see the maimed leg because it's on the side, on the good side. And the third painter decided to paint the prince riding a horse, and therefore it looked as if the maimed leg was actually part of how he was riding the horse. It was kind of lifted, and it was in the way of riding. And so he took what was seemingly a negative and turned it into a positive. So these three ways of painting actually express three different ways to do the Ahavat Yisrael. And the first one is what we just spoke about before. The first one is just ignore the bad. Don't look at the bad. And that is what we've done over here. We said, maybe this bad. We're going to overlook it. We're going to pretend it's not there because we don't look at bodies. We look at souls. That's like the first painter that just paints a healthy body. I'm looking at the soul. I don't care what the body looks like. I look at the soul. In fact, there's a story of Rabbi Zush of Anapoli. Rabbi Zush of Anapoli was a follower of the Maggid of Mezrich, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. And he one time said something to someone else. Wasn't very nice. Or whatever. He scolded someone very. I wouldn't say it wasn't very nice, but he scolded someone who was a sinner. He scolded them very heavily. And after he did it, he felt bad. So Rabbi Zusha came to his Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave him a blessing and said, "From today on, you will not see any bad in anybody around you." So, which means Rabbi Zusha would literally bad people would have bad character traits, would do things that you would objectively say is bad. He wouldn't even see it. Like, not that he would look at it and understand and have compassion. He wouldn't see it. And that's kind of this first level of love that we've discussed till now, is obviously not completely ignoring reality, but we're looking at one reality and not the other. We're looking at the soul reality. At the soul reality, there's nothing wrong. So ignore the body reality, look at the soul reality. Everything's good. There's good reason to love the other person. So that person that annoys you next time, think about their soul as his first response. And you, being a religious Jew, focuses on your soul. And therefore, you can look at the other person and you can have the ability to have kindness, care, and compassion and love for that person and love them, because you do not look at the other person. Okay. All right. Someone said, all right, let me get to some comments before I go to the next section. That's the end of the first section, the first type of love. All right. Someone writes here, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha feels more about action than emotion. Okay. This goes back to what we discussed in the Tanya many times. Emotion drives action. So the Tanya is all about giving us thoughts, okay? If we want to be able to embody the actions of all the mitzvahs, we need to be able to have love and awe of God. Similarly, if we want to be able to embody love to other people, that's why I said multiple times, I said show kindness, care, and compassion to other people. It's an action too, by the way. Not getting annoyed is an action too. You need to be able to have things to think about and meditate about to help you truly love the other person as yourself. So I hope that answers that comment. 100% there's action, but emotion drives action.
Yes, but my point is that, like, there's no way that you can love like a stranger like more than you love your own family. And it's not, that's why I said it's more about action, that you're going to treat this person, you're going to be kind with this person, you're going to have empathy the same as you will do with yourself, with your family. But like this emotional this feeling of love you don't really have for a stranger, at least I don't. I mean, I understand that I I I am how to say kind. Yes, I must be kind to that person. I all that stuff. Yes, but that sentiment that I have for my close ones, I don't really have with strangers.
So first of all, there's another joke. They say it's a lot easier to love strangers than it is to love people you know. So I'm going to start with that. You have a good question. First of all, I think this is actually true. A lot of times people you know, you actually have more trouble embodying this idea, love your fellows yourself than strangers. But this idea of loving strangers is actually at the core of the Chabad teachings, which is why Chabad has spread out to the world. We want to find the Jews we don't even know about because we love them even without meeting them. The full embodiment of this, of truly, so to speak, loving someone to the point as much as yourself is a lifetime of work. I'm not saying it's easy. The greatest people will 100% embody it all the time. We may every once in a while embody it. But that's the height of it. I mean, this is the words the Torah uses. Love your fellow kamocha, as yourself. Can't get any more clear than that. Will we reach that pinnacle? Not necessarily. Just like every other mitzvah, I don't necessarily ever reach that pinnacle, but I work my best towards it. And this is the philosophy behind it. Yes, Dr. Yannick.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think you have to do your best at this one, because to get to that pinnacle, I would say is for the common folk is near impossible. I mean, there are people, Jews, non-Jews, who you know that every time you see them, you want to run the other way. I mean, they're just there, and you know who they are, and they've wronged you, and they don't care, and whatever. And to love those people like yourself would be a mountain of work. I mean, to the point where you would really have to go ahead and work maybe even night and day to do that. And even then, there would be no guarantee of success. So I think this chapter is lovely. I think it's great. I think it's aspirational. But I do think, us Bainanese and below are going to have a hard time to see that and reach that pinnacle ever in our lifetimes.
That's why I said I think we may reach it at moments in our life. To live it constantly is hard, but we can all by having that pinnacle in our mind and that contemplation, we'll get that much closer to it in our emotions and in our actions. Whereas if you aim for the bottom, then you always get higher if your goal is farther. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think anyone aims for the bottom. I mean, that's not.
Yeah. Or even middle. You don't want to aim for
Can I
what's
say something?
Just 1 second. Yes, in a moment. You don't want to aim for what's in the middle. You want to aim for what's higher than the middle. That's always pushing yourself. And I do believe, and I will say this, that there will be moments in your life where you will act in a completely selfless way, and that will be a full expression of the fact that you love the person as much as yourself. Yes, Nina.
Moments is the key. Moments.
Moments. Yes. Yes, Nina.
Thank you, Rabbi. Sorry. I think part of loving or having a responsibility and an obligation to a fellow Jew, I once heard someone say this. They said, Jews are careful with our money because we feel we have an obligation to others with it. And we're not selfish, And that wasn't my original point. My original point was I think that by working on ourselves, we give other Jews the greatest gift by healing, by understanding our
she
anger.
Cut out, or did I cut out?
No, it might be me. I'm so sorry.
I can't hear you, Nina, anymore. Can anybody else hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Nina, you might have to type it because I don't think your internet is very good over there because we can't hear you.
Oh, okay. You couldn't hear what I was saying. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can, but make it quick so it doesn't cut out again.
Okay, I'm gonna make it quick. Yeah, I was saying that first of all, there are people who would say like Jews were very careful with our money, but no, we have an obligation to each other to give it to each other. So and to take care of each other. So, and the second thing I wanted to say is that by working on ourselves, it's the greatest gift to our fellow Jew, because when we're healed, when we're less angry, when we're more balanced, we have so much more to give.
Thank you. Well, the second point is obviously where this whole chapter falls into the Tanya. The Tanya's point is that the more you work on yourself and become more soul-based, automatically you'll be able to connect with people more. That's the whole lead into this chapter. True. Okay, so I think we have a good idea. We have a meditation. That's really, again, the Tanya is really, I actually saw someone call his Tanya class I was researching before. Someone called the Book of Meditations or something. It's not really what the Alter Rebbe calls it, but in a sense, it is. It's really a book to give you a lot of different things to think about in order to act in certain ways. Not 100% what the book is. Obviously, it gives you guidance in certain areas of life, but a lot of it is giving you meditations and thoughts for different areas of your life. But again, going back to thinking of the Tanya as the book, as the the guidebook for Chabad philosophy, and I said always Chabad is a philosophy and a movement. I think reading this chapter helps you appreciate and understand why Chabad does what they do and what animates our feeling of reaching out to every single Jew at the farthest corners of the earth, and the countless stories of the Rebbe of reaching out to quote unquote unconnected Jews in random reaches of the earth, because the Rebbe was looking at souls. As the story goes, is one time the Rebbe, after a whole day of giving dollars, the Rebbe used to give out dollars the whole day, and then he would ice his hand afterwards for a couple hours, put ice around his arm, and because it would hurt physically. And someone asked him, like, why are you doing this? Why are you standing? The Rebbe did it till his 90s. Someone asked the Rebbe, why are you doing this? And he said, when you're counting diamonds, you don't get tired. The Rebbe would view every person coming in front of him as a diamond. So, when we hear the stories of the Rebbe and you read stories of the Rebbe, you can see someone who embodied what we're talking about here. Those stories are inspirational for us. Are we at that level? No, but we strive for it and we try to do the best we can to get there. Okay. Okay, let us continue. So the next part, let me share the screen here. Oops. I think. All right, so section 2. Now he goes into, this is what Hillel said. Anybody here, most people here have studied Hillel and what Hillel has said. And it's one of the most famous lines of Hillel. But what I want to say is that Hillel's statement, many people find strange. Many people say, what do you mean Judaism is all about loving your fellow as yourself? Like, how is tefillin included in loving your fellow as yourself? Where does that play a role? Where does that come in? So based on what we studied now, it'll make sense. Let's read further. And this will help us explain Hillel the elder's comment about observing this mitzvah of loving your fellow as yourself. It's the whole Torah, all of it. The rest is commentary. So the Talmud, just to give you a history of the story of this Talmudic statement, the Talmud tells a story that there was a person who wanted to convert, and he came to Shammai, and he said, Shammai, can you convert me? I'll convert as long as you could teach me the Torah on one foot. So Shammai said, get out of here. You know how long it takes to study Torah? Get out of here. He came to Hillel, and Hillel told him, I can do it for you. Here is how it goes. Love your fellow as yourself, and the rest of the Torah is all commentary. And now look, I just told you the whole Torah on one foot. And everybody looks at this story and says, Hillel, what are you talking about? Since when is loving your fellow as yourself the quintessential mitzvah of the Torah, and everything else is commentary? I understand maybe if he said Shema Yisrael is the quintessential commandment and everything else is commentary. But how could love your fellow as yourself be the quintessential comment? So many of the commandments have nothing to do with between your fellow and yourself. There's all the commandments between you and God: tefillin, kosher, Passover, Shabbat, wool and linen, tzitzis, mezuzah. I mean, there's so many mitzvahs that have nothing to do with your interactions with other people. I could say maybe it's half of the Torah, but definitely not all of the Torah. How could the rest of the Torah be a commentary on love your fellows yourself? But based on what we studied till now, it makes sense. If the key to loving your fellow as yourself is by raising the importance of the soul over the body, if the way and the key to love others is by looking at the soul and not looking at the body, by placing the soul as important, the body not as important, then if that is the case, then 100% the rest of the Torah is commentary, because the entire Torah is about making your soul the important and your body the less important, right? From a little child, from a young age, we tell a child, don't look at your body, look at your soul. The candy's sweet, check if it's kosher. If it's kosher, you eat it. If it's not kosher, you don't eat it. That's putting your soul before your body. It's saying show up to synagogue earlier, even though you're tired. That's putting your soul before your body. It's saying stay up late for Passover Seder. That's putting your soul before your body. It's saying eat shmor matzah over the machine matzah. That's putting your soul over your body. It's saying listen to the rabbi's jokes as opposed to some comedian. That's putting your soul over your body. All of these different areas of life are fully an expression of placing the soul over the body. Giving charity, 100%. Another great example. So this is why in the Hasidic philosophy, I have someone that I study with all the time. He always asks me this question: How is this the basis of all the Torah? And so for some Jews, they just say, they look at Hillel's statement, say, look, this is really what Judaism is about. Judaism has nothing to do with the spirituality is nice, but it's all about making the world a better place by being kind to others. They look at this Hillel statement, and therefore they love the Hillel, because Hillel is their quintessential hero, basically saying Judaism is all about caring for other people. But the Chassidus says you're missing the point. Hillel is basically saying, what's the hardest thing to do? The hardest thing to do, honestly, of all the mitzvahs, is to love somebody as yourself. I'm telling you, Shabbat is easier than loving other people as yourself. Yom Kippur is easier. The hardest thing to do is to love other people as yourself. And that is only possible. Well, I'd say the hardest thing for most people. I can't say for everybody, but for most people, the hardest thing is to love other people as themselves. And that is only possible if they place their soul in front of their body. And the same thing applies to each and every single one of us, is we have to place the soul before the body, and then the entire Torah is understood. Let's take a look at, let's continue here. All right. Hillel's statement was not an exaggeration. The mitzvah of loving your fellow has a spiritual dynamic which mirrors the spiritual cause and effect system of the Torah. Let's go to the next page. As we have seen, the cause which brings you to love your fellow is disregarding the mentality of the animal soul body and shifting to the higher consciousness of the divine soul. The effect is that you bond and connect with your fellow. These two phases of initially transcending the physical and then returning to connect with it amid a higher consciousness represents the fundamental basis of the Torah's spiritual dynamic. All right, now he's confusing you. Ignore what he just read, because I'm going to explain it a little differently in a moment. So again, I'm going to go back to this paragraph. As we have seen, the cause which brings you to love your fellows, disregarding the mentality of your animal soul and body, the shifting to the higher consciousness of the divine soul, the effect is that you bond and connect with your fellow. Let's continue. For the Torah's whole basis and root principle is twofold. The Kabbalists describe the cycle. I'm going to skip this paragraph too. Let's continue. The Torah's root principle is to raise and elevate the soul's importance over the body, lifting the soul higher and higher to the root and source of all the worlds. So that is what we try and do. We try to raise the soul over the body, to make our soul the most important. I believe I explained that at length. That's what charity is about. That's what everything is about, placing the importance of the soul over your body. That's how you can keep kosher. That's how you keep Shabbos. That's how you keep Pesach. That's how you eat Shmor Matzah. All the things that we do in Judaism is all when we place the importance of the soul before the body. But then he's going to continue with another point. And he's going to say, of course, that raising the soul over the body is not enough for Judaism. Because we have to remember that our soul is here on this earth for a mission. So ultimately, the purpose is that the soul, though we place its importance, should remain in the body and affect the body. So the point of Judaism is to raise the importance of the soul over the body, but then to use that soul to animate the body to do a mitzvah, to bring godliness back into your life. That's what Judaism is. So when you put on tefillin, you are basically saying, my soul is my real life, and I'm going to put on tefillin in my physical life, and by virtue of that, I'm going to bring spirituality into my body, into my soul, into my life. When I'm going to eat kosher food, I'm going to allow the spiritual enemy and energy into my body, into my soul, into my life. So truthfully, Judaism actually is twofold. There is the focus on the soul, but then the soul has to come back and say, I need to bring that spirituality back down to the body and back down to this world. And he's going to make the same argument as with loving your fellow as yourself. On the one hand, in order to love someone else, you need to be able to focus on your soul. Then he's going to say the second point is that when you love someone as yourself and you focus on their soul, then God's blessing can rest on all of you. Only when there is unity, only when there is togetherness, only when there is oneness can God be there. Because what do we know about God? One of the main things we know about God, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. God is about the oneness. God is about unity. And we discussed this at length in chapter 20 and 21. God is about the unity in everything. And so in order for God to be able to rest his presence on us, in order for God to be able to be with us, in order for God to shine his countenance and display his Shekhinah, his divine presence on us, we need to be united. So there's actually something cool that happens here. When I love someone else, that means I'm focusing on my soul. Therefore, I love that other person. Automatically, we become united, and then God can rest on our bodies and our souls. Once there is peace, God can rest on us. God can come down and rest on us and be with us. Because God does not like to rest on divisiveness. And this is an unfortunate problem and a reality. Jews are not always united, and you have to know that when you cannot be spiritual in a vacuum. You have to be spiritual with people around you. If you don't have Ahavat Yisrael, you could do the greatest mitzvahs, but God only rests where there's unity. Let's continue. And also, as will be explained below in chapter 41, the root principle of the Torah is to draw down God's infinite light into the spiritual space, referred to by the Zohar, Knesset Yisrael, which is the source of all the souls of Israel. And I'm just going to continue. So that one will merge with one, i.e. that one God will merge with our souls, and this happens specifically when they are, so when will God rest with us? United, when we are united down below in this world, but not when there's division among souls, God forbid. For the Holy One, blessed be He, won't dwell in a blemished place. It's very simply, when there's divisiveness, it's a blemished place. You don't put orange juice in a broken cup. God wants to be in a wholesome place. He doesn't want to be in a broken place where there's fighting and arguments and divisiveness. Let's continue. As we say this in our prayers every single day in the Amidah, bless all of us, our Father, as one with the light of your face. And I cannot tell you how many times the Rabbi would quote this. Barcheinu avinu kulanu ke'echad. Bless us, our Father, all as one. I'm giving a slightly different translation than I gave here, but or panech, with your countenance face, with the light of your face. What that means is, says the Amidah, God will bless us when we are united. The Rebbe would quote this so many times. If you want God's blessings, we need to be united. So if you think that you are going to be spiritual in a vacuum, that you're going to focus on your own personal soul, you're not going to be able to draw godliness down back into yourself. Because God dwells in places where there's unity. God doesn't like to dwell in divisiveness. So if you can't get along with other people, if you can only look at your soul, you can't look at their soul, then there's not going to be a presence of God in your life, or at least not much. If you want the presence of God in your life, you need to focus not only on your soul, but other people's souls. That's his second point here. It says, number one, you need to focus on the soul. When you focus on the soul and other people's souls, automatically you create the peace and unity, because God is all about unity, is a place where God's soul can rest, as has been explained elsewhere at length. And this is, again, once again, a very powerful lesson. And another very important reason to focus on unity, and why unity and Ahavat Yisrael is another core teaching of Judaism, as Hillel said, because in order for God to be with us, it's not enough that I do my mitzvahs and you do your mitzvahs, and he does his mitzvahs and she does her mitzvahs and studies Torah. We need to have unity. And that's why Judaism always places great importance on unity. Certain mitzvahs are better done in a group. Certain Torah studies better done in a group. There's so many things that are said done better in a group. And unity is the vessel that holds God's blessing. And so I end off with this with you today. You now have number one meditation that you should walk away with is focus on your soul over your body. Love people not for your selfish desires, but love when you can look at people as your godly soul does, that you're one with them, they're one with you. You can move past looking just at their bodies. You can look at their souls. Then you have the ability to show kindness, care, and compassion, and actionable, as someone mentioned. You can show actions of loving kindness to people around you and show patience to them. And number two, understand that you can't be spiritual on an island. If you truly want God to be able to dwell in your life, find those people that bug you and annoy you. No, I'm kidding, but you have to find ways to be able to make peace with people who are not exactly your type, who are not exactly your cup of tea, and be at peace with them. God tolerates them, so we should be able to tolerate them too, and that will bring God's blessing and divine presence into your life. Thanks so much for coming, and I'll stop the recording.